Hello, everyone. Just give me a second. Oh, we're having some malfunctions this morning. Good morning. I am here this morning, and got blankets on the bed, and the cat's up there sleeping. I have my other cat over here next to me, purring and purring. And we are here live, o'clock in the morning, to talk about God. Why are we here? What is the purpose of life? And I'm not great at live streams. Okay. I'm going to get better and better. I've only been doing this for a little minute, and I'm learning. I say a lot. And I have a whole list of things to talk about. You know, some of the top questions. See, it's very challenging for me because I know heaven in a way that nobody else really does. And so for me, it's like fact and obvious. And I know, and yet I forget that just a few years ago, I didn't know. Just a few years ago, I was just questioning and lost, as everyone, pretty much everyone is. And a lot of people have figured out what they've figured out. And everything that everyone's figured out is not untrue, especially based on what information they have. One of the things that people don't realize is that, we have so many different teachings and beliefs, and we accept and reject them through our life. Who we are, our identities that have been placed on us. Brother, sister, daughter, son, wife, husband, or gay, LGBTQ, alternate. Okay, all the different labels: worthy, not worthy, wealthy, not wealthy, abundant or not abundant. And we have all these labels and ideas and images and thoughts about who we are, why we're here, that we've figured out and cobbled together through our life and our experiences. Different religious and spiritual teachings and beliefs that we've been taught. And so based on all of these different ideas of who we are and why we're here, we live our life. I'm supposed to get married and have kids, or I'm not supposed to. Or it's up to me, whatever I want to do. However we've decided our beliefs to be. And we've made those decisions based on the facts and information and things that we've experienced in our life and our reality. And I'm looking left and right a lot because I'm like looking in my own life and other people's lives, and how we relate to our lives based on outside thoughts and what we've been taught, and our religious understandings, religious, spiritual, or atheist, or mathematical, or scientific. We see the world as logic and math and science. My favorite joke God says every day is, never listen to an atom. They make everything up. God laughs. He thinks that's funny as fuck. Okay. Most people have met and learned about a God that is vengeful and cruel and wants us, we need to suffer or we need to worship. And there's all these fucking rules, and you gotta, be perfect. And they can't even tell you what that means except to follow, the 10 Commandments really is about where Christians are. And I'm not even going to go into Christ at the moment because Christians make their decisions based on the best understanding of the teachings of Christ. But what do you do if the teachings of Christ have been altered and are not what he taught 2,000 years ago? And nobody knows. Oops. Hey, sorry. I wrote an email yesterday to somebody. I was just like, I can't help it if the Christians fucked up their religion. How's that my fault? That I have the truth and they're wrong. Okay, my bad. Just because I can tell you, sorry, I'm reaching for my Bible. Okay, I have a Bible. I read it. There is truth in it. Okay. Just not as much as most people think. Okay. I use it as a reference manual. There's at least 20% truth in there. And I just don't want to argue about the Bible with Christians. I want to tell them, like, if you can't explain it in math and science, that child, whoever wrote whatever's in that book, was doing the best they could. And some of them purposefully changed a bunch of shit, and that's not good. The truth of Christ is that he taught many lives and reincarnation, and that we live many times before we go to heaven. And like wheat, the fathers plant us and reharvest us. Now, he really only talked about a singular heavenly father, but he did and he didn't. Okay. He taught against the idolatry and the multiple gods of the Romans and their society of wealth and enslaving other populations, and the wealthy that abused their workers and the people they owned. Really, they were more like indentured servants in a lot of ways at that time. You were kind of born into families that your family worked for, and that's what you did. Is you worked for them too most of the time. Kind of, I want to say a little more like the serfs of England, indentured, peasants. Um, and one of the things that Christ taught over and over and over was for the wealthy not to work their people so hard. And Christ, Yeshua, had been born into wealth, and Mary and Joseph came from wealthy, powerful families. And there were people that, believe and understand that Joseph would have been king of part of that area, except for the Romans and their rule. And that Herod in the Bible, the beheaded John the Baptist, was the son of the Herod that killed all the babies trying to kill Jesus when he was a baby, and they fled to Egypt. So, like, there's a lot of ways that this Bible doesn't properly tell the story. The first chapter of Matthew is the wrong genealogy. God's like, isn't that a clue? Okay. Christ would have never attached the books of the Jews to his teachings, because his teachings were so different. He would have attached the understanding that he was the next iteration and that he came and taught all these new truths. and most of his followers were Jewish, and he didn't teach against the Jewish traditions in saying they were wrong to do it in the past. What he taught was that they were wrong to keep doing it now that he had come. And he never would have attached his truths to the Old Testament in the way that we've done. This is not how Jesus would put his teachings on this planet at all. And half of what's in there, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John, was not written by Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John. You know, and part of that, one of those books, a good bit of it was written by Mary, Jesus's wife. In this book, he's not even married, and she's a whore. So, yay. It's 100% accurate, and you can trust every word in there. You know, I get really fired up about the Bible because it's so full of untruths. I mean, it has a good bit of the basic story down, mostly correct. He was what we call an immaculate child. That's a formula to God. Everything's a formula and an equation to God. Okay. Everything was part of the Big Bang. In 40 million, 50 million, whatever million years, billion years, there'll be a big crunch and everything returns back to heaven. The whole point of this fantastic playground for the children of heaven is so that we learn and grow. It's almost like being put in a video game. In a very real way, this reality is more like putting pieces of yourself in a video game. Okay, we're all two cups of God, period. We all came from heaven. We all return to heaven, period. Every atom of the framework returns to heaven. And so do you. The question is not if you do. The question is, what do you return as? What do you return as? And you're like, well, what are my options? Good question. I'm glad you asked. I got to write that down. That sounds like a good question. What are my options? Okay. All right. So, if this was a video game, you would want to, win all the awards and get the money and like do the best you can. If there are awards that you can only win when you're in the video game that you then get to keep forever, labels, names, things that you do that win awards in heaven for you and the God that created you. Heaven is a beautiful realm. And we've just lost touch with the truth of what heaven is. So, parts is big that are true, the Big Bang. Okay, when you understand that child that wrote that, first of all, it was a lot longer than one chapter when it was originally written. Kind of synopsis there. Yeah, you kind of shorten it a little bit, take a little bit out. Okay, the original Big Bang story is the beginning of this playground, of this video game, of this holographic reality. Okay. God I'm just going to call them the quantum, but they're the gods. They're heaven. They don't call each other gods, just like we don't run around calling each other, hey, human, hey, human, hey, human, hey, human. It'd be like, yeah, we actually have names. Don't tell anybody. And, trying to identify gods as, I got to play with my cat. It's a cat you need to play with. But identifying the gods and understanding heaven and understanding the game and understanding we're in it and being able to make new choices is what it's all about. Okay, we're in the game of learning, the school of earth. And I really appreciate everyone. Like, I mean, all of heaven is focused on earth right now. A million gods in the quantum sit and stare at their children all day, hoping they do better and make better choices. There are several gods in the quantum that have millions of children on this planet. And they want all their children to be happy, not just the few that are born into wealth and prosperity. They want the wealthy to make this monopoly game on this planet so that everybody wins. You ever played Monopoly where everybody gets some property and everybody gets some money? And then you play and play and play. And this is mostly when it was just like me and my sister, and one of us, we would each have half the board and money, and we would just play for a long time, and we'd both end up with lots of money, and you know um, we knew that there was never going to be a loser and a winner. We both had a lot of money. We were never going to bankrupt each other. And we would deal in my brother and give him some properties so he could play. And we just have fun playing, okay? And enjoy it. And we can create economies and wealth, ecologies of wealth, where our people thrive and souls evolve and lots of people win the game of life. Okay, right now we've created, if you've ever played the board game Life, you get a job, and based on your job, you get money, and then you take different paths, and some people can land on a lot of spots where they get lots of good money, and some people can land on a lot of spots where all they end up are bills, 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 and bankrupted. And we've created a monopoly, a game of life, especially in the country of America, where more people lose than are winning. And we've really, some of the wealthy and people that are really unclear in the understandings of what this world is about and the purpose of it have purposefully decided that, hey, we can make shit tons of money charging people 10 times. If a pill costs us 1 penny or $1, we can charge them 10 times that. And that's profit in our pocket. And we can allow the companies to pollute the water and the air and the land as much as they want, so that everything is toxic and everyone's sick and they need more of our prescriptions. Like, this is seriously what our boardroom directors are sitting around doing. Yay. He's so smart, monkey. 7 million years out of pond. We climbed out of the trees and decided we would enslave and poison everyone and kill the planet. Yay. Daddies in heaven are also very proud of their little evolved monkeys. Yay. I take this world in such a different view than everyone else. I really do. Because because I visit the quantum and I know I've kind of seen the picture of other universes and how they evolved. And I like and the understanding of how God makes gods. To me, it's not a mystery anymore. I know why we're here. I can explain it. I have definitions. And I because I spent a lot of time sitting with trees asking one question. And it reminded me of Kung Fu Panda and the master turtle that, sat in the cave saying, "What am I? Who am I? What am I? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I?" And it was like that, except with trees. And and you know, saying why, why, but why, but how, but why, but how, but why. And so slowly I unlocked myself and I got more answers and I got more answers and I got more answers and I got more answers. And I kind of set a challenge for God. I'm like, okay, I wanted to know all the answers so that I was always right, that I always knew what the right answer was. And God's like, well, that's going to take a minute to explain all that to you. And I'm like, okay, can't you just download all of that into me in 1 second? And God's like, well, yeah, but it would kill you and it would overload your avatar and you'd be like, and I'm like, oh, okay. So that's he's like, the goal is to get the information so that you comprehend it and we don't overload you. So over several years of asking and being shown and taught by the quantum, by heaven, by the gods, and um not even realizing I was talking to God. Okay, I thought I was talking to the trees. I mean, I was talking to the trees, but I just I didn't understand even who all I was talking to. I know in the Muslim traditions they bow their head to the sun, and I was talking in a lot of ways to the sun and to the universe and to myself and to everything. And one of the Thomas's the truths of Saint Thomas, Thomas's writings, he talks about lift a rock and I am there, split a piece of wood and you will find me. And so this was information that was all percolating inside of my brain as I asked why. And I understood that heaven was an energy realm where everything manifests instantly. A lot of humans think heaven is like this place of two-story houses with two-car garages and white picket fences where everyone has 2.5 kids and a dog or a cat. There's a lot of Christians, especially in America, that have this concept of this is what heaven is. And we're going to go up there and it's all going to be perfect. And I began to understand that that's not what heaven was. Yes, heaven is perfection. Heaven is love. Heaven is this beautiful, beautiful realm, and we can feel it. Okay, we're connected to it. We're all connected to heaven right this fucking moment. We can have the love and the peace and the joy and the perfection of heaven right here on earth, in our hearts, in our minds. And it's part of what Buddha teaches, and having peace and love and being enlightened. Okay. How many paths back to heaven? 8 billion, 8 billion and one, 8 billion and two, 8 billion and three. Every soul takes their own journey. And it's a journey of many lives across many planets, like a video game where there's different levels, or you have to go to all these different places and collect all these different things before you can go to the final thing and do the, you know. Um, I read a very interesting article about developers, computer game developers, and the writing of the code and different things. And that in this game, the character finishes a level and disappears and goes to the next place and the next level and the next world, and has to die. Basically, they in the code, the character has to be completed and ended and terminated so that then it can go to that next level, and it never, goes back. Um, and yet they still have a reset button that can allow you, like, if you tried, you could reset it back to that level and replay that level. But then you still have to complete it before you can go back to this other world, and anything you've done on this other world, you lose. And so it was an interesting, like, understanding the game from the developer's point of view, perspective, and it's how I see the world now. I spent so much time talking to heaven. I don't see the world as I did when I just was in my belief systems from this planet. I've remembered lives on other worlds. Okay. I know. Okay. I know, just because I understand the requirements to be born on this planet, that every soul on this planet has lived on a minimum of 2 other planets before this one. It's one of the requirements to come to Earth. It's like high school level. You can't get in until you show that you went to elementary school and junior high. Okay, it's like a certain level of a video game. If someone's gotten to that level, certain things that they've already accomplished. I've got to clear off that bed and make it look better. I did some laundry, and the cat's up there, and I just keep throwing blankets and pillows in different areas. I can make it look nicer. But I'm here to talk about God, and that God does not see any separation. We in the physical think we're a little independent, separate, you know, beings, that we're all these separate things, and we're all different from each other. And we're not, okay? We're all God consciousness, just in different forms. And there is no separate. Heaven does not see the separation. Like, it's really hard to explain, because it's quantum, it is subatomic, we're connected. Heaven is connected to everything. There is nothing that is not. Oh, okay. I'm going to explain it this way, because this is a better understanding. If a woman is pregnant, she is not the baby. And yet the baby is never separate from her. And so, in a very real way, the universe is like the baby of heaven. And it is attached, and it is connected. It is never separate. And yet, um, it is its own thing. It, it is not the women. So it's another way for us humans to conceive, because we're in the 3D. we're in the physical, we're in the limited. We actually have a very small brain, as much as we think we're so smart. We're only 7 million years out of the pond, people. And gods do evolution and creation. Okay. There's literally code in the programming to help create life. It's all part of the karmic code. So, how does heaven create the physical? Why? Why do they grow children this way? That sounds crazy. Okay. You think my human self is crazy? The gods are crazier. They created this shit. Why? Why do they do it? It's all going to be in my next book. So everybody get my next book. Why do they do it? Because it's fast. It's the most effective, efficient, fun. They think it's fun. It's like playing a video game that you wrote and putting pieces of yourself inside the video game that you created for yourself. So they think it's fun, even though the little pieces of themselves inside the game don't always think it's fun. Because we don't realize we're inside the game. We don't know what the goal is. And we get lost in the game, mists of confusion, you know. And in high school is, Earth is one of the harder levels. And part of the hardness of the level is that the truths on this planet got twisted and removed, like this big. Okay, there was a divine truths that were brought to this planet. This ain't them, but at one point, there were some really divine truths that were written. Okay. Yeah. And correct books. And the early Christians had the correct genealogy and understood the correct genealogy for Jesus. And it was in the books. It is in Luke, I believe. But the fact that it was changed by people further down the road, not by Jesus, okay, but within 100 years of they changed, and man did it, not God, not the heavens, not the quantum, but ego of man deciding they knew what was right. And so much of this big was created by a combination of men thinking they know God better and that they understand the rules and that they know. And greed and power, money, enslaving other people. The New Testament was birthed by the Romans, not by the Christians. And they did it for a reason, to take control of the religion. They tried to kill Christ, and after Christ, they killed thousands. Thousands of Christians were killed and crucified. And their lands stolen and their churches taken and their lands and properties and driven out of the areas controlled by the Romans. For 300 years, the Romans killed and persecuted and burnt the truths of those that followed Christ. And what happened was that then you had multiple survivors in the outskirts of the Roman Empire who, because the truths got laws and things, just it'd been 300 years since Christ was there. There were several different factions of Christianity happening. And a new Roman emperor who had been elected, whose father had been in the Roman Senate and positioned him to help be elected. And there were actually, as I understand it, several different emperors over different parts of the Roman territories. But Constantine the First was a general who helped lead the Roman armies and was a good conqueror and was expanding the Roman territories. And guess who they kept running into? Christians. So, what to do? What to do? Can't kill them all. And part of that wasn't just because they couldn't kill all the Christians, but that the Christians had been married into other areas, other families, other traditions and societies and groups, some of them for over 100 years. And so as the Romans were expanding into some of these areas, the Christians had been there and gotten married and entrenched into these societies, and they couldn't just kill everybody. Okay. And everybody wasn't just going to sit down and let them kill everybody um, any longer. And if you kill everybody, who are you going to tax? So I think there was a change in ideology and policy, which was, you know what, we can't kill them all. We'll just, get baptized and organize their religion for them. And as I mentioned, there was about 8 different groups of Christians. They had different scriptures and gospels. But I don't believe this iteration of our Bible is even as close to the truths as they were 300 years after Christ. We know that the Romans spent about 200 years and had several councils to get rid of the concept of many lives out of the Christian teachings, because that was part of the foundation of Christ's teachings, is that we live more than once, that we live many lives, that like wheat or grains, we're planted and harvested and replanted and harvested. And that we all came from heaven, we all return, that we need to care and share with each other, and that heaven was a place of perfection, and we're all children of heaven, we're all brothers and sisters. And that those were like a lot of his core teachings right there. And Christ was not celibate, he was married to Mary. The rumors in heaven is he had some children before he returned. During the times of his travels, he traveled from age of 12. So after age of 12 in the Bible, I'm not supposed to really talk about this. Wasn't Jesus. Jesus was not my topic for today. I was supposed to be talking about how God sees no separation, the war in heaven, and how Satan was cast out. So we'll get back to Christ. Okay. I have a shit ton of things about Christ. I have a whole book I have to write about Christ and the truth of Christ. But after age 12, when he did what he did at the temple, and he's like, I'm doing my father's work. His father, Joseph, had a visitor, okay, and was strongly told, and his mother, Mary, okay, like another angel appeared and said, go get your son. Go get the son of God. He's being not goody goody. And they realized that Yeshua had endangered his life. Okay. The king and people in power were unpleased with the temple event. And he needed to leave the country. So arrangements were made and Christ got packed up and shipped out. I'm not even sure he was 100% on board with it at the time. Okay, I really got the feeling that Joseph put his foot down and said, "You are going to get on this ship and you are leaving the country now. Here's your bags. We love you. Kisses and hugs. Get the fuck out of town." Um, I really don't think Yeshua was on board. Yeshua was very much like, "It's time for me to cast Satan out of the country." I mean, he was ready to go. And Mary and Joseph were inspired. My understanding is they received an angel. They got a notification. Somebody showed up in their bedroom like, "Excuse me, get the Son of God and get him out of town. He's upset the apple cart, and he's not ready yet. He thinks he's ready, but he's not." And so Jesus was sent away, and part of it was to go and learn. Like, his dad's like, "Hey, you know what? Here's a good thing for you to go do. You need to go, and it'll be good. You'll learn." Part of it was all part of the Father in heaven that created Jesus's plan, because he wanted that advanced DNA spread on this planet. And so the rumor from heaven is that Yeshua, being made of this more advanced DNA, left seed in appropriate places around the planet. Okay. And he traveled in Europe. He went to many sacred sites in some different places. I'm of the understanding he went to Stonehenge, among others. Okay. As well as other sacred temples and in Egypt, and the pyramids in Egypt and pyramids in other places. That he traveled in the Eastern lands in China, and Buddha was one of his masters that taught him, and he learned from, and he learned from. Um, and in India, he learned Hindu. He retained his semen. He was not celibate. He retained his semen and cycled his sperm, and left some of the most advanced DNA on the planet in some different places, and then had several children with Mary. He came back about the age of 28 and began his ministries a bit later in that time period. I basically, almost everything in the Bible about Mary is a lie. Mary Magdalene. The one thing that is true about Mary Magdalene is that Yeshua appeared to her first. Why? Because that was his wife. That's why Jesus appeared to Mary, because that was his wife, and he loved her, and she was praying for him, and he and she could see him. And he didn't quite look like him because it wasn't exactly the same, but she knew him, and they had. So, it's why Christians don't like me, is because I actually know more about Christ than most Christians. I know more about Christ than's in this book, and I can explain it mathematically. From the garden, when he was perfect, from the Garden of Gethsemane to death, how he was perfect, what the definition of perfection is in karma, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, we'll get to Christ. We're supposed to be talking today, and Jesus mathematically. Okay, Jesus is a savior, one of the saviors. I can tell you why he was created, how the savior codes was used to create different saviors, Moses, Buddha, Muhammad, Abraham. I mean, there's been Noahs. There were many Noahs. It actually was not just one Noah. We use the term Noah, but many of the native tribes around this world have Noahs, have stories of surviving the big flood. We know that even the highest mountains on this planet have been covered by seawater in the ocean, at least at some point in the history of the planet. So I just honoring all the truths we know, okay? And the God that I talk about is creation and evolution. So there's no the earth's only 7,000 years old and God waved a magic wand and created the earth. Okay. It's just misunderstandings and children making the best. The original people that wrote Genesis didn't know that suns were made of burning gas, hydrogen and helium, and create all the matter in the universe and then explode. They have their life cycles. Everything in the mortal realm dies. They didn't know about the Big Bang and the universe and how math and science and calculus. Like, if you don't know calculus, your understanding is going to be a little limited. So they could never have written and understood God in the way I can, because we have more knowledge on the planet now. And I'm not here to tell you when they're wrong. Oh, yeah, I am. Christians, you don't have all the I'm here to tell them the truth. Okay? I'm here to tell them the truth, and my God will be proven mathematically and scientifically and vibrationally and spiritually. And I can explain to you the proper way to get baptized and all that stuff. But in the heavens, they had never created children like this. Heaven is an energy realm. And the way they created gods, and it's a place of perfection. And the way they created gods was very, very slow. In a place that basically has no time, the way they created gods took forever. And one guy couldn't do it all by themselves. So, well, I mean, they could just like even longer. But if one god was 1,000,000 gallons, and every god in the quantum could grow 2 cups, and altogether every year they could make 2 new gods, with everyone in the quantum making as much God consciousness as they could and donating it to the creation of new gods. Every year they could have 2 new gods. And then because they had 2 new gods, they could grow a little more God consciousness. And so the next year they could, grow 2 and a quarter gods. And so in this way was the beginning. And they understood what it took to create a full-fledged adult. Okay, you can't have puppies in heaven. Every thought manifests instantly, so you can only have trained minds, who vibrate at love and above and will never hurt themselves or anyone else with any thought or vibration of their being. Okay, that's heaven. Perfection. And so it becomes not about good or bad. Or if you go back, because you're going back. The question is, what are you going back at? But in the quantum, they used to grow gods really, really slowly. And one day, and growing gods was their favorite activity. It's what everyone in heaven pretty much spent all day doing. It was the greatest joy in heaven, was to create more God consciousness, more heaven, so they can create more gods, so then they can create more God consciousness, so they can create more heaven, so they can create more gods, so they can create more God consciousness, they can create more gods, so they can create more heaven. I mean, that's all they do. Like that's the core drive of heaven, is to have joy and beauty and peace and perfection and make more heaven. One of the laws, I mean, there are basically 2 laws in heaven, and you can't see it, but I have a cat sitting right here in my that doesn't need love. She just need love and love and love. And so in heaven, you have all the drive is to make more God consciousness and make more heaven and make more perfection and make more God consciousness and make more heaven and make more perfection. And so in this realm of only seeking to create more God, more heaven, more God, more heaven, a God had a thought that had never been thunk. I hit a good spot. She's like, oh, that's a spot. That's a spot. Get that spot. Oh, yeah, that's a good spot. The thought that changed all of heaven. The thought that changed all of heaven. The thought that transformed all of heaven. The thought that was the thought that I just, like, it, after this thought was thunk, it could never be unthunk. And that thought was very, very simple to you and I. And yet it had never been had. No one in the quantum had ever been like, ah. And once it had been thought, it couldn't be unthunk. And so what was this thought? This thought that changed everything. Yes, I've been going on about it for like 5 minutes. I haven't told you what it is, because it's so simple, and yet it was so revolutionary. The thought was, if I could take a piece of myself and separate it from myself, just like I took like cat hair off the cat. You can't really see. Anyway, you pet the cat and you end up with a bunch of cat hair all over. Okay, if I can take a piece of myself and separate it from myself, I could grow it faster. Because heaven is heaven, and it's perfection and love and beauty and joy. And if I could separate a piece of myself from that, I could grow me faster. I could grow more God consciousness faster. I could make more God consciousness faster if I could just separate a piece of myself from myself. And that idea, like, broiled in his brain for a moment, and was such a light over all that he was, that the gods in heaven started flocking to him. They were instantly attracted. They were instantly like, yeah, What if we could? What if we could separate a piece of ourselves, from from all that we are, from the perfection of heaven? We could grow ourselves faster. Now, there were a whole bunch of complications that happened. But the thought was prevalent, and groups of gods began, like, once you put forth the question, they had to find an answer. They had to find a solution. Like, if this was a possibility, they had to try. Growing God consciousness was all that heaven loved to do. And if they could do it faster, well, holy smokes, let's do it. And so all these gods, like, they were on board and they were working on it. Now, this is where there's a lot of information that was given to me over a very long period of time, like different parts. It's kind of like I didn't get to see the whole bracelet. It was explained to me one piece at a time. And then I strung it all together so I can tell it to you in 5 minutes and break down some of the concepts in a way that you can understand it. But it took me years to get and put all these pieces together in the understanding that I have. And some of the stories were told to me in pieces and parts, and then they, like, I finally got the whole picture and I understood. So I'm going to share the best I can. And I like to lay down. I have this little day bed, and I sit, I meditate, I lay, I sit up and type, I read, and I'm like a little kid. Okay. So heaven creates in math and equations. I think it was Einstein that says that um, God writes, the language of God is mathematics. And I believe that Einstein and other minds on this planet were beginning to see and understand and comprehend the universe mathematically, and talk to that part of heaven. And we just didn't all realize that we were all talking to heaven, because the Christians talking to heaven and the scientists talking to heaven get different answers. So it didn't all make sense. But when I explain everything, it's mathematical, it's scientific, it's logical, it's vibrational, it's spiritual. Okay, when you know the truths of heaven, then it's all, because all is all, and all it came from heaven, and so it's all. So on one hand, it just makes total logical sense that everything is all and came from heaven. And yet Christians would be like, but not math and science. And you're like, yeah, God's mathematical. So the language of gods is really math, is much closer to what they don't speak, they don't have mouths. Okay, they're more like fish. Heaven is more like a big, living in a big ocean. Okay, we don't have arms. Our avatars are different because it's a different kind of realm. We don't have arms and legs the way our human bodies do. Okay. And our minds are much more developed than the human mind. Okay. So it's just what it is. And you kind of have to suspend some belief and this idea that heaven is a 2-story house with a 2-car garage and a white picket fence, because that's not at all what heaven is. But heaven is perfection and love and joy and forever and eternity. And they don't speak English, they speak math. So the gods got together and began writing equations in a very real way, a program. a program to separate a piece of themselves from themselves and grow it. And it would be kind of like if it was physically possible for me to take my avatar and turn part of it. This is hard to explain. If a god is 30 gallons, taking 20 of those gallons, and it didn't cause him any pain, he could take 20 of those gallons and magically turn 15 of them into a blender, and then run the other 5 gallons through the blender. And then suddenly that God, instead of being a 30-gallon God, turns into 90 or 120 gallons. Like he gets done and he dissolves the blender and he turns it, like he collects it all and finishes this program, okay, this code, because it was like a program. And it was written for one God only. The first universe was only one God. And it was written very specifically. It was written on a certain time frame, shortened. They didn't want him to like become too much. They didn't want him to explode. They didn't know if he would go crazy, like it would finish, the program would go crazy, and then he would destroy all of heaven, whatever was left of him. Like they weren't sure of the results of this. They had questions. There were some people that are like, I don't know about this. Okay. And so they had these equations. They ran the program like in quote unquote simulation. They thought they had all the bugs worked out. And the God that was the first God, the God that had the thought, we'll call him Carl. Carl got to choose if he wanted to run the program first, if he wanted to do the ride, if he wanted to. Okay, it was his choice. And he, of course, was like, oh, hell yeah. Okay. It, all in the quantum had to approve, because this might well just fucking destroy the quantum. And, you know, they put safeguards, they put guarantees, they kind of put protection around Carl so that whatever happened, it wouldn't destroy all of heaven. And they let him run the program. And he loved it. Okay. He turned into a massive God. He did replicate later. There was so much God consciousness that was created from him doing the program and the ride. It worked. It was a success. It literally almost instantly tripled his size. And so then he, after he was restabilized, he did duplicate. But one of the things, and they shortened the program and kind of like they limited the program so that they would not cause a spontaneous replication in heaven or a child to be birthed, a new consciousness created that would somehow destroy heaven. They were a little worried about it. It was an important part of the process because they actually spent quite a bit of time on, let's make sure we don't destroy heaven. In the process of trying to grow new children, you know, let's just check a few things here. So I really emphasize this point, and I go over and over it because heaven really emphasized it and really went over and over it with me, because it was a concern. It was a serious part. Like, oh my God, is this literally going against everything heaven stands for to create new children? to create new gods? Like, would that work? There were a lot of people that didn't believe that this would work properly and that it would create some kind of anomaly and aberration that was not of heaven and the perfection that was heaven. There were literally moral arguments about it. But they finally all agreed. The Allah mind for the all good, for the highest good of all. Okay, I don't know a lot about the Muslim traditions, but I do know that name is part of their traditions, and it is a true symbol and level of godhood in the quantum. So, with the understanding that, ooh, they wanted to create more gods. Carl ran the program. Carl then multiplied. Okay, the program was a success. But they learned a lot of things. And one of the things they learned is that they had to create the program differently. That things would not spontaneously grow unless you created things to grow. They created basically a framework of like suns and planets without creating a framework to grow the God consciousness inside. And so literally the most they grew was algae, single cell green things. That's literally all they managed to grow. And they were thrilled. Ooh. You and I may judge that and be like, oh, that's not much. They were fucking thrilled. They couldn't believe it. And they learned so much. Also, okay, so from the outside, from the other gods watching Carl, it looked like he went from being a 6-foot-tall man to curling up on himself and staring at his belly button while his belly button fucking exploded. And they are just like, oh, that doesn't look good. There were some serious concerns about how Carl was going to be when Carl came back out of this program. Okay, they were like, his belly's blowing up. Oh God, his belly's blowing. Oh, he's going up. Oh my God, he's blowing up. Okay, but the emotions coming off Carl were unbelievable. So much amazement and joy and rapture and amazement and like seeing things he'd never seen before. It was like, wow, 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 just coming off of him in waves. You know, every time there were explosions in his belly, he was more amazed, more excited, more love, more just like, oh my God, I never knew this was all I could, I could be all of this. And it was glorious. It was glorious to every God watching. It was so enrapturing and expanding. Just the gods watching Carl create the first singular universe playground. Created, multiplied the amount of God consciousness they all created just watching him go through the process. And they were like, we could create more gods this way, just watching each other do this. And if Carl's okay, we can create like a dozen more gods a year. And then it was a success. And Carl was okay. And Carl could replicate, multiply, duplicate. They have a weird word for it that doesn't mean that, because it's not an exact copy of you. It's like you create yourself into two separate new selves. So it's not the understanding that humans have. And oh, oh. And so the gods are just like amazed. The first universe was a success. They learned so much. They were going to still continue doing them on a short time frame, increase the amount of programming to create vessels. They realized they had to create DNA and vessels for life to grow and evolve in on the planets. And that was the beginning of what they now call the karmic frame, the karmic side of the ride. You have the framework, which in a video game would be like the background, the world, the plants, the trees, the rocks, in some ways they would be the non-character players. And okay, the background, and then the children that they put inside to grow, the God consciousness that they put inside to grow, because that cat's on an evolutionary cycle and she's going to end up like a god just like the rest of us. Okay, but she's not going to be a cat god. Yeah, it's so hard to explain. A god is like a million gallons of a million experiences. You can fit it all into a much smaller area. I just give you the conceptualization of a million gallons to understand a million experiences, and all the experiences and growths and side quests you do in a video game, and you have to go here and get something or go there, and the progression of different characters through a game, different gaining skills and knowledge and awards, and in a very real way, that's what we're living in, a holographic reality created by the gods to grow God consciousness. And so the very first universes were thus singular, only one God at a time. They were shortened so that the gods would not spontaneously replicate, duplicate until after the process was done and they could do it appropriately and properly. Because there's a way that you do it that's proper, and a god does not divide or clone. It's not like I created two of myself and they're exactly the same. It's like I created so much more of me, and then I replicate and duplicate and divide into two separate, more advanced beings than I was. So it's what it is, and it's more than I truly comprehend, but I can explain it as best I can. Because you don't have a pen and then you have two of the exact same pens. Okay, you have two totally new, unique pens that are both each more than the other than they were before. So, the gods kept playing with these individual universes. More gods would do the rides, and they started out just one god doing a ride at a time while all of heaven watched. And then they actually got more advanced where they actually had several gods doing universes at a time and growing, because not just the god on the ride running the program was growing, expanding, and evolving, but all the gods in heaven watching them were growing and expanding and evolving and becoming more and outputting more, um, by the process of watching and experiencing it, what was happening. So it was all beautiful to the heavens. It was all beautiful. They loved every moment. It was all perfect. And they finally had enough gods do individual rides that they wanted to try to do a group ride. And a group ride came with new levels of problems. And so they spent a long time working on the code for this group ride. They were only going to have a certain number of gods do it together. It was only going to be they were all each going to only put in a certain amount of God consciousness. They were controlling the input and output. Okay. One of the things, if you understand input and output, they always like to maximize now. They always like to maximize the output of the rides and the playgrounds and the games and the program, the God consciousness, the children. There's all these different words we could say. But at the early stages, they were very much about controlling the output and limiting the experiments because they wanted to make it safe. And so they did all this in this first group universe. They limited the number of gods that would be involved. They limited the amount of God consciousness that they would each put in because they wanted to control the output. And I'm not going to go into great details. I'm going to explain that the first group playground failed. At the end of the program, when it was supposed to solve, resolve, and dissolve, and everybody's God consciousness was supposed to go back into themselves, and they were all supposed to be whole gods more than they were, it didn't. And kind of like they were quantumly entangled in this moment. As the program solved, resolved, and dissolved, it didn't. They didn't all solve and resolve. And so it didn't dissolve. They tangled. And it I can't even explain the pain that it caused those beings, but it was beyond our comprehension, truly. And in heaven, everyone's connected. And even though they had put safeguards in place, every being in heaven felt the pain and felt like they were being ripped apart and destroyed from the inside out. So that was a bad boo-boo. It was the worst moment in heaven that's ever happened. And it broke all the rules of heaven and literally created sin in heaven, in that you caused harm to yourself and everyone else. And that would be a sin. That's creating negative karma. And so steps were taken. Okay, immediately there was shields put up around the problem to protect the rest of heaven. And gods immediately went to work to solve, resolve, and dissolve the situation and fix the problem. Once they got it fixed, the war in heaven per se began, because there were people that said we can never allow that to happen again. And everybody agreed. Everyone agreed we can never allow that to happen again. The problem was that some of the gods that were on the ride and some of the gods that were creating in the physical, doing individual rides, knew that that was a bad accident. They knew they fucked up. But they also knew this was the bestest, fastest, most funnest, amazing way to grow children and grow new God consciousness and grow more heaven. And heaven did too. Everybody in the quantum knew that this was the right thing. And yet there were some people in the quantum that really, really, like, they never wanted to allow it to happen again. The bad part. And so the gods went back to the drawing board. Okay, some of the gods that were on that ride, they got hurt themselves. Were the most vehement that they could figure it out. They knew they had hurt everyone. In human terminology, we would say they were repentant or sorry. And it wasn't about being sorry, it was about being responsible. Responsible. In order to respond to what had happened, they had to acknowledge that what they did was a boo-boo and make all the right steps to correct it so that it never happened again. And thus began the part of the programming that we call the God codes, the Savior codes, the Savior codes. Now, the Savior codes, in a very real way, are like God's get out of jail free card. Okay, they can be applied across multiple planets in ways to solve, resolve, and dissolve whatever karmic equations are created for all the beings on the ride. And so that at the end of the program, or we say universe, playground, whatever, they can solve all the karmic equations for the entire universe. And know that all that came from heaven will return properly. So heaven, you have the Big Bang, everything exploding, the big crunch, everything returning. And the Savior codes as God's get out of jail free card to solve and resolve all the karma of the ride so that it's safe for everyone. Everyone in heaven and everyone on the ride. And so part of doing group rides and ending the war in heaven was casting Satan or sin or negative karma out of heaven so that they create their own place and space and void for the program, for the ride, where it's safe for everyone to play. It's safe for all of the quantum, and it's safe for the playground is safe for everyone. It's safe for the children, and it's safe for heaven. And nobody, all of the sin or Satan is cast out. And so, in a very real way, like I try to tell people I can explain Jesus mathematically. And there's a number of reasons why I say that, because I can explain him by the laws of heaven. I can explain him by the savior codes and how he was a savior and how he was created with the savior codes, and how Buddha was and Moses was and Noah, the different Noahs were. Okay. And after the first group universe, and they solved it all, and they started creating bigger rides that they could grow more children in. Okay. One of the most beautiful things that happened in all of heaven was the next group ride, because it was even more gods, and they were going to put it on a longer time frame, and they were going to make it so that children were produced out of it. They hadn't done that yet. The first group one was a failure. Okay, it didn't work right. They didn't get any children out of it exactly the right way. Okay, it was a bad boo-boo. And there's more information about it, but it just know they tore a hole in heaven almost energetically. That's what it felt like to everyone, is having a hole torn inside you, and being torn apart from the inside out. And pain had never been had in heaven was had in that moment, and it would never be allowed to happen again. And so they cast Satan and or sin and or creating negative karmic equations with anyone, or causing harm or pain, or being less than love and above and evolving. I don't know. Heaven has a lot of, it's all math and science to God. And so they created the first group ride that was going to output children. And it had a lot more karmic development in the ride than any that they'd been able to create before. It was on a longer time frame. They had more God consciousness. And they were like, we're really doing this. We're going all in. And it was a success. It was a success. And they birthed so many new gods. I get like really, because the joy of heaven after the big travesty and the war and being divided, to create a successful ride that birthed new gods into heaven, and then solved and resolved and dissolved properly, was undeniably the most beautiful, amazing, wonderful. Like, the joy of heaven was multiplied beyond explanation. So much pleasure and joy and gratitude and just exaltation, rapture, joy beyond imagining. And the children that were grown were so amazing and unique and gods like they had never known. And it was glory upon glory upon glory, and rapture and exaltation to the heavens. And that's really all there was. after this first disaster of a ride, the next one was so amazing and so beautiful and so unspeakably, rapturously glorious. Everyone in heaven knew that they'd done the right thing, and that it was right, and that it was good, and that it was time, and they'd figured it out, and it was all going to work out. And the gods that would be created would be glorious. And I just, like, even up until that moment where they were doing the group ride again, and they were doing it outside of heaven, and it was more gods, and they had this whole plan, and they're all like, okay, we're all gonna let you do this, but if it goes bad, there are a lot of naysayers in heaven. Okay, old fogies that only like it one way. Well, it's perfection. Okay, they expect nothing less than perfection. And some of them have been around for, we think a million years is a long time. And they're just like, that was like 15 million minutes. A million years to us, 15 minutes to God, 13 billion years old. God's like, it's been running for a few hours. Do not, if God says, I'll be back in a minute, do not wait a human minute. That man will show up in a year and be like, that was only a few seconds. What are you talking about? I never had a year, but I literally, especially in the early time where I was talking to God, I feel like I'd ask a question on Monday and I'd get the answer a week later. Like, where are you? Like, I was just talking to you. Like, I know you're here. Like, hello, where's God? I just, like, I asked you a question, and he shows back up like, what? I wasn't even gone 10 seconds. What do you want? I was like, it was a week. He's like, well, um, God has the best excuses. Okay, it's been an hour and a half I've been on this live stream, and I have been having a glorious time. Okay, I love talking about God. I love talking about the universe mathematically, scientifically, logically. Um, one of the things is I'm gonna end this one, and we're gonna go back to more tomorrow on why God always has the best excuses for everything anyone ever does. Like, we all point at each other, they did that to me, they did that to me, they did that to me, or my life is whatever, blah blah blah. God has the best excuses for everyone. They're really, well, God can see quantumly across multiple lifetimes, and so he's like, oh, that child, blah 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 blah, he started that, blah 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 blah. Everything's all cycles, equations, energy, and excuses. And God, all the gods love all of us. They see no separation, not the way you and I see separation. Like, you and I would not look at our toe and be like, that's separate from me, because we feel it's attached. And that's much more the way heaven sees us, that we are just extensions of them inside. A baby is not the mother, and yet the baby is not separate, it's attached. And so the whole of the universe is attached, and all of us are connected to the Father that donated the 2 cups that makes us. And all of us are connected to the mother whose shell, whose body, whose molecules, whose atoms we wear. And we are all starseeds immortal light beings living in physical vessels. And so we are here to evolve and love and become like they are in heaven. Peace and love and joy, living in balance and harmony, and sharing and caring. And all of the wealthy on this planet are invited to become all they are meant to be, to evolve. Love and evolve are the two rules of heaven. And as the children of heaven, to wake up, become what all you are meant to be. Take all that wealth, take the wealth, use it for good. Get awards on this planet and for heaven. We have the opportunity to get awards that are coveted in heaven, that everybody wants. The awards for doing the most good, changing the most, waking up the most, helping the most people live in beauty and balance and joy, and helping to turn this planet into a jumping off point for millions of children to graduate back to the heavens. We have an amazing and unique and blessed opportunity. And we can do it in love and joy and balance, and creating the world to become all it is meant to be. I love you all. You're my brothers and sisters. And there's a plan for everyone. And I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to help bring some of these truths to the planet. And this is just the beginning. Oh my God. There's so much knowledge. There's so much truth. There's so much light. And we can do it in beauty and balance. And we can, work towards, we've kind of screwed some things up. Some people are still in process of really wanting to unbalance things. But it's ultimately, we completely fucked this world. Got 40 billion more years, people. I mean, do we really want to start over? Instead of grow up and evolve? Yeah, we don't have to make a decision today. Okay? Just start thinking about it. Think about what if. What if we could? What if it's possible? What if we could save the planet and make it a jumping off point for heaven? What if we could work with the higher powers? We've done some bad things, but we could make some better decisions that would help this planet and all honor. Kill a few here, kill a few there, but fix it all in the long run. I love you guys. You are my brothers and sisters. Let's evolve. Let's work towards being the most we could be, getting the most amazing awards in heaven they can be had, coveted awards. Awards you can't get from heaven. You can only earn them in the playground. So, we have exciting times and possibilities and choices and awarenesses to save the planet, make it fair, balance some things. Learn to share and care. I love you all. Happy full moon. Hugs and kisses from heaven. Huggy, 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 huggy. I will talk to you tomorrow or later today. I was supposed to do a live stream at like 10 o'clock, so we'll see. I'll talk to you later.